Okay, well, Jayne, thanks for meeting with us, and what I'd like to do is just ask you to tell us the story about Hero, you know, who it is, when did you start, and what does Hero do?
Okay, well, it's a long story. Hero is 26 years old. So my children were in 2nd and 5th grade when I started Hero. But I had decided, my husband and I decided to homeschool in kindergarten. And it had only been legal in Minnesota for 2 years at that time to homeschool your children. So there weren't a lot of options out there for homeschoolers other than parent support groups. And then once in a while you'd get together maybe and do like a nature center trip. There were some actual co-ops where you might have a phy-ed class or an art class, maybe a science class, but you were only meeting maybe twice a month, but nothing real formal. And I was a part of all those organizations and I loved it, made lots of good friends, lots of good contacts, and served on the board on them. And I started realizing that I really loved homeschooling my kids. I mean, I really loved it, and I wanted more for them. But being a one-income family, I knew that we couldn't afford to hire tutors, and I knew that I could not teach my kids everything I wanted them to know. I couldn't teach them a foreign language, and my husband is a scientist, but you know, to have all the lab equipment is expensive. I love art, but I'm not an artist, and I really didn't want all that mess in my house either. And so I thought, you know, there's got to be other people that feel like I do. So I went to the group that I was a part of and on the board of, and I said, have you ever wanted to expand and make this more academic-based, more weekly based instead of twice a month, and just expand? They were real comfortable the way it was, and they said, but there is a need. I mean, if you have a desire, other people must too, so maybe you should think about starting it, which I had never thought of. So 26 years ago, 27 years ago, I did a lot of research. I went and visited a lot of different co-ops around the Twin City area and looked at what they were offering, how they were structured. Then I went and started digging with the state, and I filed as a nonprofit organization right from day one. I wrote our own bylaws, I wrote our purpose, our statement of faith, and then, you know, went from there to more of an academic-based group, meeting once a week. So we started with 4 classes, 40 kids, and expanded to now, 26 years later, we have about 160 classes. And we have way over 550 students. And we have 52 contracted teachers. So if someone had told me 26 years ago that my desire to give my kids more academic-based learning with the homeschool methodology, I would have never, ever dreamt it would have turned into something like this, and I probably would have ran the other direction because this was not what I had started out to do.
Sure, you grew into the growth, I suppose, of Hero, and clearly you were a pioneer 26 years ago doing this. But 26 years is a long time. I mean, co-ops, and we'll talk a little more about the difference between Hero and a co-op. But there's no other group like this or organization like this that's been around that long, to your knowledge, is there? Not in Minnesota?
No, and I had no model to follow. I just went from my mother's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what I wanted for my kids, and I knew what I could provide and what I couldn't provide. And I also knew I couldn't afford to hire someone myself. So I wanted to share the cost, and give other people the same opportunities and the same classes that I wanted, I figured they must want too. I mean, I'm not strange in saying, I want my kids to learn a foreign language. I want my kids to be able to do public speaking, but not to mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. I want them to give it to their peers. So I knew that other people must want the same thing. And we just grew year by year. I mean, we started out K through 6th grade, and that went well with the 40 kids. And then eventually, started expanding and adding a few more classes each year. But always staying to our focus and always staying to our purpose, which was to provide a Christian, non-denominational, education-based, academic-based learning for homeschool students. So never wanting to expand into and go into other areas, but keeping it academic-based.
And you really had to maintain that vision. Tell me a little bit about the challenges around that. It's, I think, unusual, or maybe it's just a testimony to that you held strong to what you felt the mission was, that Hero didn't really evolve into anything else over the years. This was the mission at the beginning?
Right, and it was our purpose, and it's easy to get sidetracked, and there are a lot of good causes out there. I mean, there are tons of things that are great organizations to be a part of, but the main thing is I wanted it to stay academic based. I didn't want it to turn into a youth group. I didn't want it to turn into a club. I didn't want it to turn into a mom's Bible study. It wasn't a church. It was to be academic based. And I wanted it more than anything to be done in a Christian way with a Christian environment, so that parents, it was to be non-denominational. I didn't want people fighting over, what's the right religious viewpoint. I mean, that wasn't our purpose. Our purpose was academics, teaching the math, teaching the science, and teaching creation science, still giving them the viewpoint of evolution, because that's what they're going to face, but giving them the tools that they need to be able to understand the argument both ways and to be able to stand firm in their Christian faith and yet still love science. And I found too that there are different writing methods to teach writing. Some learn through the EIW method. Some don't like that. They don't like that strict structure of writing. And so we learned and we evolved into, and we offer like 2 different types of writing classes, 2 different types of math styles, 2 different types of science styles, because kids don't fit into a little box, and you want to tailor their education to your child's strengths. And that's so important.